Tables are more than just rows and cells. We can also add more semantic meaning to our tables with headers, footers, and bodies. So let's continue with the table that we created in the previous video, and we're going to add on to it. First, we're going to add a table head element. Now, as you might imagine, the table head element appears towards the top of the table. So we'll typethead for table head, and then we'll close it down here. And this is going to wrap our first table row here. Now, why are we doing this? Well, for the most part, this is just for the sake of semantics. When you have a really complex, really large table, it will make this easier to search for search engines. It will make it easier for screen readers. And finally, it will make it easier to select the table head when we start working with CSS. So it'll be much easier to actually say you want to style the T head and none of the rest of the table. Now, just like we have a table header, we also have a table footer. Now, contrary to what you might think, that actually does not go towards the footer of the table. We should just put that right after the table head. However, even though we're putting it here, it will still appear at the bottom of the table. So inside here, we're going to create a new table row, and then we're going to create a table cell. And inside of here, we'll say, thanks for reading. And we'll save that, switch back to the browser, and refresh. And as you can see, that's actually only appearing under our first column, when really it would be pretty nice if it could actually span across both columns. So to do that, we're going to learn about a new attribute called column span. So we're going to apply column span to our table cell, and we're going to say we want this cell to span across two columns. So we say col span equals 2. Save that out. And when we switch back and refresh, you can see that that table cell is now spread across the two columns evenly. Now there are two more attributes that we should learn about here. The align attribute and the v-align attribute, or vertical align. So first, let's go ahead and try to align our footer so that it's centered instead of off to the left side. So we'll use the align attribute, and we'll go ahead and say center. Save that out, refresh, and as you can see, our thanks for reading footer is now centered within its table cell. You can, of course, align it to the right, or align it to the left, or even justify the text. So let's learn about vertical alignment. To do that, we actually need to create a cell that has a little bit too much information in it, and that will create some space in one of the other cells. So in one of our headers here, we'll say, these are my favorite fruits. And then we'll just put in a line break here, so it actually creates some space. We'll save that out, switch back to the browser, and refresh. And as you can see, we now have vegetables vertically aligned in this table cell to be in the center, or in the middle rather. However, if we say v-align for vertical alignment, and then change it to something like top, we can switch back and refresh, and it will now be towards the top of its table cell. Conversely, we can also say bottom, switch back and refresh. Now it's at the bottom of its table cell. And then finally, we can change the v-align attribute to say middle, switch back and refresh, and now it's in the middle of its table cell. Now finally, let's actually revisit the border attribute that we applied originally And let's just change it to a really high value like 5 pixels instead of 1, just to see what it looks like. So as you can see, when we increase the size of the border, it adds this bevel all the way around the border, of the table, but it doesn't actually increase the thickness of the lines between the cells. To do that, you need to use cell padding and cell spacing. So let's add the cell padding attribute to our table, and this will apply to all table cells. We'll say 5, switch back and refresh. And as you can see, we now have more padding within each table cell. We can also increase the space between our table cells by using cell spacing. So we'll set that to 5, refresh, and as you can see, we now have nice large borders or spacing between each one of our cells. That about wraps things up for tables. Remember, tables should never be used for laying out a web page. However, if you have some tabular data you want to display, then they're perfectly fine.